with like a Mardu deck, I think that's kind of solidified. But these Sidisi and Sultai decks, they're all over the place.
Yeah, so Sidisi Whip, it does not really have a marquee finish yet. I think the first I heard of this deck was during the Pro Tour coverage.
Yep.
I don't remember who all played it. There was a healthy Japanese contingent that brought the Sidisi deck. And it's been kind of like riding under the radar ever since. You mentioned that the other clans, they have the aggro versions and control versions. In this standard format, I kind of feel like words like aggro and mid-range and control kind of lose all meaning.
It's weird because, the other hat that I wear is the content coordinator. It's like I have to define these decks.
Yeah, exactly.
And it might be just time to just chop off the aggro from Jeskai. It's just Jeskai.
I think people, Jeskai is the one that's gotten there, where there's only one Jeskai deck. But the minute we do that, there's going to be like this Jeskai end hostilities, like
no, of course.
Proper control deck.
That's what Rudy Briscoe tried to do last week in Worcester. It's just like, I just have all these control cards and Keranos, and that's how I win. So I actually agree with you that, you kind of want to chop it off of all the things and just say, it's just Jeskai.
It's just Jeskai, yeah.
Even though there are like 12 different ways to build the deck.
Yeah, well, and more than that, within a given 75, there might be 3 different ways to build the deck.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's like one of the hallmarks of this format. There's these people kind of like starting, their A team is like the aggro deck, and then they board into a control, or start mid-range and board aggro, or like every deck has its own juke.
I've never really seen that, like in all my years of playing Magic either, that all these decks can go different ways. You see Behrens going to play Heir of the Wilds here. Pierson started off with a Mountain and a Mystic Monastery, so he's getting his Jeskai mana online. Deck doesn't really start until turn 3. It does have Magma Jet and Lightning Strike to cast on turn 2, but turn 3 is where the party gets started. Yeah,
and Heir of the Wilds, we were just talking about this. Heir of the Wilds, I think, traditionally, well, I don't want to say traditionally because it's only like 3 weeks old, but like this is a card that mostly you would associate with aggro, right?
Yeah.
But this is almost like a mid-range combo deck even. So Heir of the Wilds kind of feels like it doesn't fit even. There are 3 Heir of the Wilds and then 4 Satyr Wayfinder, and those are the 2 drops in this deck. It's like a really strange card because, you think of Sidisi Whip, you're thinking of a deck that's just trying to utilize the graveyard, but this thing kind of just plays the role of like a 2/2 unblockable, basically, or just a 2/2 really good blocker. Yeah, I mean, it's a Typhoid Rat when it needs to be.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a Watch Wolf Typhoid Rat split card.
Okay.
Which is a pretty good place for a card to be, honestly. Like, in almost all situations, you want one or the other.
That's true. That's actually true. We got a Community of the Gods here. We'll see an Elvish Mystic. There's also a Night Howler. You see a Temple of Malady. What else we got there? Another Heir of the Wilds and an Opulent Palace, I believe, are the cards that Joseph is looking at.
Is Joseph going to get the party started, filling up his graveyard? It looks like he is going to keep the second Heir of the Wilds.
Now, what he can do is grow the graveyard here a little bit for Night Howler. Let's see what this follow-up play is going to be. It's going to be a Murderous Cut. Okay. And that Heir of the Wild's got to be in his hand.
Yeah.
Not sure that could possibly be in play.
I'm just thinking, I'm adding it up. I mean, maybe there's Delve, things get weird. Like, I'm not really sure what costs what anymore. But, but yes, that Heir of the Wilds, that is not how Commune of the Gods
that
works.
will be in his hand because Commune adds the card to the grip, not into play.
Yeah. So there was those 2 tapped lands. So I'm looking at it like, hang on, this is... Yeah, we're going to have to... There is some delay getting that communicated to the table, but we will get that rectified. Yeah, the delve cost is fine with Murderous Cut. The fact that Heir of the Wilds is in play is not okay. So he needs to pick that up. Which hopefully he will. Okay, there we are. All right. And we're back. Okay, all right.
Two-headed giant players, your parents are now...
So now we're good, thankfully. I don't want any Heir of the Wilds just getting in there for points of damage that they should not be getting in for.
How good would that card be if it was free? If it was a Burning Tree Emissary, Typhoid Rat, Watch Wolf, Trip Split card.
I think you know the answer to that question.
I do. I kind of do.
It would be quite good.
Yeah.
Quite good.
Be all right.
It's better when you have to cast it, though.
Yeah. Most cards are.
Here's a Satyr Wayfinder.
Satyr Wayfinder going to find... well, you can only find land, of course, but does not actually add anything relevant to the graveyard, it looks like. Actually,
turning over a whip kind of stinks. He will find a land there. He already has an Opulent Palace in the grip. The rest of the cards are going to go to the graveyard there. There is a Llanowar Waste, and our follow-up will be, the Heir of the Wilds. I wanted to play a little early.
Right back. We knew he wasn't going to stay gone for long. Yeah, I mentioned that, it was kind of a stinker of a Satyr Wayfinder who didn't put any creatures in the graveyard for Night Howler, things like that. Any random old card in the graveyard does help, though. This deck does play the full 4 Murderous Cut.
Okay.
And I'm looking over for any other Delve cards. I don't see any. So no, nothing crazy. No Necropolis Fiends or anything like that.
Looks like Pierson's going to start trying to go to the dome. You saw Jeskai Charm just go upstairs. Maybe it's time for an Anger of the Gods. Yep, that's going to clear everything out of here. Of course, those creatures will be exiled, so can't use those for Delving Murderous Cuts. But their graveyard is already pretty large. Also, those are creatures that aren't going to go to the graveyard for Night Howler. That's something else to keep in mind.
How about the old quote-unquote aggro deck with main deck Anger of the Gods?
That's the Sean McLaren special right there.
Yeah.
It worked out just fine for him at the Pro Tour. Got second place with that configuration. Actually had 2 in his main and 2 in his sideboard. Did not want to lose to Jeskai Ascendancy. That's actually why he built his deck that way.
Okay. That is a deck that has also, it is present, but just on the fringes. I think there were 3 of them, at least when I started, like, actually keeping track in like a macro sense, there were 3 that were still in contention.
I'm not too surprised to see that deck be more of a fringe deck. It's really hard to play, and it's really hard to build. So I'm not surprised to see that one be a lot smaller in comparison to the other decks that are out here.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are hesitant to pull the trigger on it.
Take a look at the top 5 cards here with Commune. We got a Sidisi, another Commune. There's also the Nemesis Immortals, Temple of Mystery hiding out there. So Joseph does have to decide what card he does want. Nemesis Immortals is almost to the point where it's going to be super cheap.
Yeah, it might not be 2 yet. If it could cost 2, that would actually, I feel like that would make it, okay, there it is, all right. Yeah, if we could play it for 2, I would want it. Otherwise, I think I am leaning towards Sidisi and getting the chain going here. And the question is, what can Tony Pierson do about a 5/5?
Well, the problem with these decks, this Aggro deck, is that 5 is kind of the great toughness in this format, because Stoke deals 4, of course.
Right.
And this deck can't really play Chain to the Rocks. Even though he has a basic mountain in play, there are 3 mountains in this deck, more than most Jeskai decks, so they really can't play Chain to the Rocks the way that they would like to play them. So that's the problem with them. They have a real issue with Siege Rhino, obviously. It's a 5 toughness creature. The same thing can be said here for Nemesis Immortals.
Yeah, and awkwardly, none of the fetch lands get a mountain. So there's, well, none that Jeskai can play. So no way to actually kind of cheat on your mountain count. So yeah, basically we are putting it to the top with Jeskai Charm or getting hit for 5.
Pretty much. Or getting hit for more than 5.
Sure.
Which could also be pretty ugly. Top card's going to go to the bottom here with the Temple of Mystery. One thing you may have noticed with the Commune of the Gods last turn is that Joseph elected not to take anything. He just milled all 5 cards, and I was wondering, can you actually do that with this particular card? Because some of them actually force you to take something.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, but he took nothing to make sure that he could cast his
already had
Immortals.
the Nemesis in his hand.
Yes.
Okay. I gotcha. I got that one by me.
I was like, because there was a Sidisi and a Nemesis Immortals. I was like, that's really weird that he didn't take anything, but he needed to fulfill his graveyard requirements to make it so that he could cast Nemesis on the cheap.
Sure.
While the window is open.
Yeah.
And having a 5 toughness creature in play against Jeskai Aggro is a really big deal, especially when there is a whip accompanied with it.
Yeah, we've got this whip anyway, so whatever creature we put in the graveyard, it's not staying there.
There you go.
So we might see Sidisi's coming back. We might see dueling Nemesis Immortals.
Yeah, I mean, Pierson is in a world of trouble. He can't get a 5 toughness creature off the board. There's another Nemesis Immortals in the graveyard. And with Whip in play, the burnout plan is basically done. So this is actually one of the unique ways to get around Jeskai Aggro is, you're gaining life, and you've got a 5 toughness creature in play. And they really can't do very much about this. And it looks like another one's about to come back. Or CDC, this go around.
Just make things a little hairier. Okay, we can actually put a stop to that one immediately.
Yeah, he's going to kill it with the trigger on the stack. Now, of course, the Sidisi will get removed from the game because once Whip actually kills it, that'll get removed from the game. So we'll get that out of his graveyard into his exile pile.
Yeah, and there it goes. But does get to bolster the creature count in his graveyard a little bit. And land coming into play tapped, so not going to be able to monstrous the Nemesis Immortals this turn.
Not just yet.
Which would be a shame, or which is a shame if you're Joseph, because that would be lethal.
I still think he'll be okay.
Just the old Tenyu.
He's at a healthy life total.
The casual Tenyu.
And I don't think, I'm pretty convinced that Tony can't do anything about this.
Does he have any Banishing Lights? Is that an option?
There are 2.
2, okay. And then digs to find them, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so we might be live. In fact, I am smelling a dig right now. No dig. There's a disdainful stroke in his hand, it looks like.
It's a bad smell. Wait, hold on.
Whoa, okay.
Your nose may have been working.
Yeah, okay.
We are going to go through time.
Boom. 7's a lot of looks to find a Banishing Light, so Tony's not out of it yet. The tricky thing is he actually has 2 very big Banishing Light targets.
Yeah, I think that's the issue, right? Is that he has two things that he actually wants to Banishing Light. He's taking a look at 7 cards here. A lot of lands among them. He gets one more card. I think Banishing Light may have been the first card that he saw.
Yeah, that looks like one.
It looks like a Jet and a Banishing Light in his hand. Well, he'll be adding those to his hand because the rest of his options are just lands.
Right, which he does not need at this stage. The awkward thing is, even if he does Banishing Light the Nemesis, there's one in his graveyard anyway. And I think he may actually be at the stage where he can whip it out and monster sit all in one swing.
Yeah, and that will just do it just fine. So Pierson's going to draw here. Banishing Light has been added to the grip along with the Jet. You see the Mantis Rider as well.
Oh, good, a clock.
Yeah. Right on time.
Yeah.
As it were.
But first things first, we have to not die to the things that are in play. So
There's the Banishing Light. He's going to take care of the Nemesis, but I think that's the whip is what gives Joseph the inevitability. I don't think that there's any way for Pierson to actually come back from this.
Well, when the Nemesis is about to untap and kill you, they kind of both provide inevitability in that way.
That's the big problem here.
Yeah. I think honestly Tony's play here is take the creature that's in play and hope that Joseph doesn't see what he can do with the Whip of Erebos.
That's fine. That's
and
fair.
it's also possible that he actually doesn't have, that there aren't enough creatures in the graveyard for it to be a one swing. Although if the first one was 2 mana, then this one basically has to be as well.
Yep. So here this comes. Whip's going to bring this back.
Just a quick verification. Yeah, there are 5 creatures in that graveyard. All right.
This is a 5/5, and that's an attack for 5.
Getcha and scoop him up.
Yeah. So Joseph Behrens going to win game number 1 here over Tony Pierson. Sidisi Whip up a game over Jeskai Aggro. Both players going to take a look at the sideboards. We are going to do the same. Going to start here with Tony Pierson, and we'll find a Phyrexian Revoker, 3 Dissolves, a Disdainful Stroke, 2 Negates, 2 Erase, 2 Anger of the Gods, 2 copies of Keranos, God of Storms, then 2 copies of Fated Conflagration. What you'll find here, Anger of the Gods was really good in game number 1 because it exiles creatures. There are plenty of creatures to kill with that, so I expect to see the other 2 of those come in. And I actually like the Revoker against Whip of Erebos.
Yeah. I like Revoker. I actually like Fated Conflagration a reasonable amount just because it is a spell that kills a 5/5. And then, what's it? Disdainful Stroke. I'm intrigued with Disdainful Stroke. I think that having a 2 mana answer that you can kind of like play a tap land or play a 2 mana spell and then leave up a counter for the Whip or the Sidisi when it shows up. I think Disdainful Stroke is actually a pretty big deal in this matchup as well.
I am a little curious about just how the mana will work with Fated Conflagration. Just, how likely is he able to cast that on time when he needs to? There are definitely some nice targets in his deck, in Behrens' deck, to actually kill, but will he be able to cast it on time? Triple red in this deck, it's not impossible. You've got 8 temples, you've got Mystic Monastery. The mana in this deck is pretty good, but can you actually get the job done?
Yeah, it's a tall order. In this case, I think that like a lot of times this is a spell that you actually are happy to hold.
Okay.
It's not something you need to cast on turn 4.
Okay, that's fair.
All that often, and that's probably true in this matchup. So I don't think it'll be that big a problem unless he like actually needs to kill a Nemesis Immortals on turn 4 or something like that. That could be a taller order, and it's a real thing that could happen as well.
What do we got on the other side?
Looking at Joseph's sideboard, we have access to a Llanowar Waste. That's interesting. A third Whip of Erebos, 2 Reclamation Sage, 2 Bioblight, 3 Arbor Colossus, 3 Doomwake Giant, and 3 Nylea's Disciple. Of these, this is where it gets odd because, again, the Jeskai deck is known for kind of switching it up, becoming a more controlling deck post-board. So you see cards like Bioblight, which you think would be actually very good because it deals with Jeskai's threats, of which it doesn't have very many. But it might actually not be that significant if Tony is going to be leaning post-board on things like Keranos, Sarkhan, things like that. I'm not excited about any of these, really, in terms of like crazy game breakers. Nylea's Disciple, good against a burn deck. This is sort of a burn deck, but it may not be so much post-board. Again, the Reclamation Sages, I think, those are the two that I would confidently bring in under any circumstance, no matter how Tony boards.
Okay,
just
I can see that.
as answers to Banishing Light.
I can see that. No, only 2 Banishing Lights in the main deck, but it is a clean answer. And Banishing Light actually does a nice job of turning off cards that are really good for you in the matchup. So just having a way to kill Banishing Light, I think, can be actually pretty important.
Yeah, and one of the really nice things there is, like, well, actually one of the biggest threats for Banishing Light, one of the biggest reasons that Tony would want a Banishing Light is Sidisi itself.
Sure.
And if you get your Sidisi Banishing Lighted and then unlock it, it's a free trigger. It's all the value.
Very smart. I hate that they can kill Sidisi with the trigger on the stack and you don't get a zombie. I hate that.
I actually just learned about that interaction just around when you said that. So you know what? I hate it too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
That just doesn't sound like it should be a thing.
Yeah.
But
I actually hate that
totally
about that
is.
card.
Yeah.
They can just lightning strike it with the effect of the stack and you get nothing if you hit a zombie. If you hit a creature to get a zombie, you get nothing.
Well, you get a Sidisi in your graveyard.
You do get that.
Which is a real resource in this deck, as bizarre as that sounds.
I know that Brad, talking to him in between rounds, he's still a very big fan of a Sidisi deck. He doesn't know how it's supposed to be built. I'm sure with how he brews and how much Magic he plays, he'll figure it out. We saw him try it in Jersey. He went 8-2, you know, placed in the top 32. Wasn't the finish that he was exactly looking for, of course, but I think that eventually someone's going to find the best Sidisi deck.
Yeah, so talking to him after that tournament, he kind of felt like he misread the metagame.
Okay.
And that he did not build the mid-range breaker that he needed to in order to succeed in that tournament. Because that tournament really was just like green decks staring at each other.
There's a lot of devotion that weekend.
Yeah. I don't know if this build that we're seeing right now is actually like functioning as the mid-range breaker that we want it to. But yeah, that's basically what Brad has tried to do. And so I don't know if maybe Sidisi goes over the top of that or not. It kind of feels like it goes in that direction, but it's hard to say.
Well, the nice thing about the Sidisi whip decks or Sultai, however you want to classify them, is that there are a lot of different ways that you can build them. So you can definitely be the mid-range breaker deck that I think Brad wanted to be that particular weekend. Just it felt like maybe for that weekend, Necropolis Fiend was just a poor choice.
Yeah.
It was something that just everyone could kill. It never worked the way I think that he wanted it to, which was get this in play early and then just mow down their threats.
Right.
Never really got to do that. A couple of lands to start things off. You've got Mystic Monastery and Temple of Triumph on Tony's side, along with an Opium Palace on Joseph's side. He's got the first play of the game. It'll be an Heir of the Wilds.
There's that Heir of the Wilds, getting the party started again.
Trying to give them beatdowns. So Pierson, not a surprise, is getting started on turn number 3. Mystic Monastery comes rolling off the top. And unfortunately for him, that's his third land, but it looks like he may have a Lightning Strike or a Magma Jet to cast. So he's okay. Looks like he might just strike this right away. Yeah, just get that thing off the table before it gets out of control.
And again, it's so weird to think that, like, once the creature goes to the graveyard, like, now we're in business. But really, I think Heir of the Wilds in this matchup, or, well, in this deck, it wants to go to the graveyard. I think we are more in Typhoid Rats mode in this particular archetype.
I think so.
Yeah, it is meant to be a speed bump to throw in the way of Rabble Masters, Seekers of the Way, Siege Rhinos, Coursers of Kruvix even. Not Mantis Riders.
Can't stop that one. That one flies in the sky. Behrens is going to go down to 17. You see the top card of his deck is actually a copy of Llanowar Waste, so he will have a land to play. There's an Elvish Mystic off the top.
I've literally never drawn a card in my life off of Coursers of Kruvix. It just doesn't happen. I don't know why people play this card. It's cool. It means I draw all spells. It's nice. But
yeah, it's really rough. I never draw land. It's just always spells always.
yeah, it's mono gas. But
that's an interesting complaint to have. I always draw spells. Gosh darn it.
I know.
I can't stand this. Whip of Erebos is going to come in after the Courser. Is going to allow Joseph to gain some life, and in case things start to work his way into the graveyard, there's also an Urborg there as well for some mana fixing.
Mana fixing for Tony. Any black cards?
Tony does have black mana now. Turns out there are no black cards over there.
Wasn't planning on it. Okay.
Little corner case action, perhaps. Got to start with an attack there with the Mana Strider.
Yeah, and Whip, probably the key card in this matchup. Like, the life gain, a huge deal. These Jeskai aggro decks, I don't feel like they have a great game plan going super long.
I mean, they're able to build their deck in such a way to do that. I don't know if they want to go super, super long.
Right.
They can play a little bit of a longer game if they would like to. The problem is the life gain, as you mentioned, because this deck wants to race always.
Right.
You know, I think that's the big deal, is they always want to race. You know, they can kind of check Sorens, and, you know, they don't want to play against a card like Siege Rhino because it gains life and because it's so big.
Right.
And Whip causes a similar problem as the Rhino.
Yeah, I mean, like, they can clear a board and then have, like, a thing left over to kill you with.
Yeah.
But if by the time they do that, your opponent's at 40 from whips and whatever else, then that gives them an extra several extra draw steps, and often the opponent can use those draw steps to come back in the game. But whip is going to get taken care of.
Erase is going to get the job done on that, and that's actually a really big deal to get that thing off of the table Because, again, Whip can run away with the game all by itself. You saw Pierson use a Lightning Strike on the Air of the Wilds that came back from the Whip. And if you're Joseph, you're probably thinking, okay, that's actually, like, fantastic for me. You're basically using a real card on a fake card.
Yeah.
So you're probably happy with that card advantage engine, but your Whip is now gone due to a race.
For sure. I'm looking over Joseph's list, seeing what all we can do with Lightning Strike. Of course, Sidisi, the namesake, that's a 4 of. That's a big target for Lightning Strike. Nyx Weaver, as the game goes longer and mana becomes less of a bottleneck, Lightning Strike, not really that great a card against Nyx Weaver, but it could be relevant. Other than that, I mean, well, those are, honestly, Sidisi's the big one. So, yeah, like Joseph actually drawing out a Lightning Strike there, he's definitely got to feel good about it. Once again, no spell off the, or no land off the course
so just a rough life.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen.
I think if that's the case, you should play with Courser always.
That may be the case.
I think that's
actually.
how that's supposed to work. Here's another Air of the Wilds. Mantis Rider holding down the fort here in a big way.
Yeah,
Just see this a lot when we watch the Jeskai deck. Just a lot of decks having difficulty actually just getting Mantis Rider off of the table, even though it's just a 3/3 creature. Here's a Stoke the Flames to take care of the Courser.
Okay. And yeah, now Mantis Rider suddenly the biggest creature in play. I mean, it kind of was already. Joseph's still in the clear to be attacking with that Air of the Wilds if he'd like, but not making the headway that he would like in this match.
Flood Strand going to get sacrificed. Pierson's going to search up a land here. He is searching up a 5th land to cast Sarkin in just a moment.
Okay.
Flood Strand will search up an island, and now we're just going to go to the skies and try to get the beatdowns as fast as he can.
Are we making a 4/4 getting in there, you think?
Yeah. I just kind of want to race now.
Okay. So it's not quite a 2-turn clock. Joseph has two life points more than Tony would like in order to be able to actually just 2-shot him here. But no potential to swing back and actually cause meaningful damage to the Sarkin, particularly with his Mantis Rider blocking.
Yeah. Mantis Rider actually, in a weird way, protects the Sarkin from anything bad happening. You get to attack for 7. You get to attack for 7 the next turn, and I imagine at some point Pierson will draw a burn spell to finish things off, as this deck is known to do.
Yep. I believe I caught a glimpse of a Jeskai Charm in there. So.
Yeah. I think his last cards are Jeskai Charm and Dig Through Time.
Okay, so that's like 3 burn spells, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
All right, Joseph gonna go digging some more.
Satyr Wayfinder, of course, can only find lands. Bile Blight and a bunch of other cards are just dumped over into the graveyard.
That Bile Blight, I started to say would have been nice, but it actually wouldn't make that much of a difference here.
No, not really. Air of the Wild's going to come into the red zone. Sarkin's going to go down to 3. The last card there is a Reclamation Sage. We're wondering if he was going to board those in. They are here.
He actually has one in the main, so maybe that's the one. But I would be very, very surprised if he is not bringing in some extras of those.
Making sure all the mana is tapped appropriately, which it is. Pierson's going to draw a card, play his Mountain, activate his Sarkin. I imagine it's time for 7 more in the air. And in just a second, we're going to see ourselves Jeskai Charm.
In there and fires to the face.
We're going to go to game number 3 here between Pierson and Behrens. Jeskai Aggro versus Sidisa Whip. It's all tied up, and a third game is what we're going to play here in just a second.
Yeah, so that game played out obviously much better for Tony because he established his clock quickly and then was able to disrupt Joseph, from getting his crazy Trump clock online in terms of 10-10 nemesis and things like that.
Yeah.
You're gaining 1 million life with Whip, all that. This feels like a matchup that is very tempo dependent. The first player to actually start attacking wins.
I would 100% agree with that. I think the one thing that I noticed in that game is that Air of the Wilds is a card in this particular matchup that just feels like it's kind of out of place.
Yeah.
It's just, a 2/2 for 2. The Jeskai deck just doesn't really care about that, and they can control it if they want to.
Right. And I mean, it's a 2-drop. The deck needs a healthy amount of those, and it needs 2-drops that fill up the graveyard, which this deck obviously has ways to do that are better at doing that, and it plays those. There's 4 Commune with the Gods, 4 Satyr Wayfinder, and then the 3 Air of the Wilds. Those are the other 2-drops. So Air of the Wilds is kind of it functions as a Satyr Wayfinder in a weird way, just because it's a body that is meant to go to the graveyard. But it also can apply pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I understand the inclusion of it in the deck. I have no problems with that. It just seems like in this particular matchup, it just doesn't do very much.
Well, it definitely doesn't relative to, Actually, I don't know. Having it against things like Rabble Master in game 1.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. No, Rabble Master are probably not that big a deal. With you're a Courser of Krufix deck. You're a Nyx Weaver deck. So maybe Rabble Master not so big a problem. Things like Siege Rhino then, like there are a lot of big burly attackers on the ground, and being able to just trade off with one.
Oh, I'm fine with I'm fine with it in the inclusion of the deck.
But yeah, in this
certainly
matchup.
Against Abzan, I think it's great there.
Yeah.
In this matchup, I wouldn't be surprised if Tony boarded out his Rabble Masters.
Yeah, well, that's actually almost certainly true.
It wouldn't surprise me. As you mentioned, the ground is basically locked up. Like, we didn't see Night Howler get cast in game number 1. It got milled over, but even, that card can just lock up Rabble Master and make it pretty poor, too.
Yeah. I wonder if Heir of the Wilds is actually just, like, locks it on Smiter level, where it's such an efficient body that you need a reason not to play it.
Okay.
I don't know if it is. I don't know if, like, 2/2, maybe 3/3 with Death Touch for Grizzly Bear mana. That feels like right on the borderline of that.
I think this is you showing your love for Loxodon on Smiter.
Well, that's just the example I chose. I mean, you could, if I don't say Loxodon Smiter, say, I don't know, Wild Mongrel.
The good old days.
I mean,
that's a Magic card.
Yeah, you had to play Wild Mongrel, right?
That is a Magic card right there. Temple of Malady. Top card going to go to the bottom here for Behrens.
I'm trying, what's a non-green example? They don't make them like that anymore. Stormbreath Dragon. Yeah, if you're red, you got to play Stormbreath Dragon, right?
I mean, Secret Away is an example.
Okay, sure.
One,
yeah, there we go.
So the 2-drop's going to be, it's going to be a Satyr Wayfinder. We're going to take a look at the top 4 cards here. Murder's Cut, Temple of Malady, a Swamp, and a Forest. So those will go to the bin. Temple will go to the Grip. And that'll be Behrens' second turn of the game.
I remember last year when I briefly played around with these green-black graveyard decks. There was a lot of pressure to like skimp on your land count because of course you want to turn over a lot of creatures, which meant that I saw constantly 1 land hands with like 2 Satyr Wayfinders and 2 Grizzly Salvages in them or something like that.
The tension with that is so tough because you do want to have a lot of creatures, especially in this build when you have Sidisi, but you also need to have enough lands that your Coursers and your Wayfinders actually work. And I think that's, like, deck building flaw isn't the right way to put it, but you put a lot of unreasonable attention on your deck because there are only so many cards and the numbers only work in a certain way. Like, you can't have enough creatures and enough lands to make these things work.
Yeah, like most decks have that tension where like you need to draw X number of lands and X number of spells on average in order for your deck to do things in your first 7 or 8 cards, whatever. This deck actually has that tension play out across maybe the top 25 cards.
Yep.
Where sometimes there just aren't enough creatures in your top 25, and you play the enablers and they don't enable you.
Yeah, that's like the conflicting thing with the deck, and it makes you wonder if you can build a deck in a certain way to make it work. I imagine that you can, but it definitely makes things conflicted for you when you are building your deck because I remember seeing that too. We covered green-black dredge a decent amount, before the rotation took place, and a lot of the times it was 1 lander, as you mentioned, with Satyr Wayfinder and the Grizzly Salvage or something, and it's just like they drew their second land too late. Now you're salvaging 4 lands instead of 4 spells, and then your deck, it just gets a lot worse then.
Yeah. Yeah, these 2-drop enablers are actually like so awkward when they're not cast on turn 2 anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we see, one get cast on turn 3.
Yeah, it's not great either. I think Joseph has plenty of lands. He picked up a land off of the Wayfinder. He got a copy of Opulent Palace, and the last turn he got a copy of Temple of Malady, which he just played last turn. It's like, okay, now I've got my lands, my mana base is good to go. Now let's, dump the good stuff in the bin. Let's get the creatures down there. So now he's got to work his way towards that, and now he's under duress while doing that, because now he's going to go down to 14 from the Mantis Rider. You saw Lightning Strike last turn, and now Mantis Rider is also doing what it does, which is hold the fort, make it so these Wayfinders can't get some chip damage in.
Yeah, now we did see a Bile-Blight flipped over last game from a Wayfinder, I believe. But he didn't get to cast it, but we do know that he did bring them in, at least for game 2.
He just got to cast one now to kill the Mantis Rider. Follows up on the Heir of the Wilds, and now he can start getting that chip damage in. And this is a more reasonable draw here from Joseph, because getting Mantis Rider off the table was a huge problem last game. Now it's off the table this game, and now, the little dorks that this deck plays, your Heir of the Wilds, your Satyr Wayfinders, now they can actually start chipping away. And Pierson doesn't want to turn his burn spells at those creatures. He wants to use them to go upstairs to the dome.
Especially given that it looks like he does not have a 4th land drop.
I don't think so.
So Tony's on the play 1 spell per turn cycle for the rest of the game plan, it looks like. Well, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and then there's real tension here, too, because you can see his mana base. He's got all 3 basics.
Yeah.
So he can't play his Dig Through Time at this point. Not that he has enough cards in the graveyard anyway, but now he needs to actually work his way towards another blue source. He also has a copy of Faded Conflagration in his hand.
We're a long way from casting
Yeah,
that.
we're not even close to casting that. So now there's some real tension on his mana base. Here's a Commune with the Gods from Joseph.
And of course, Joseph just going to keep applying pressure.
Yeah, just keep doing your thing.
Yeah.
Take an Ilea's Disciple here. Put the rest of these cards in the bin.
Yeah. This looks like Joseph did bring in the life gain. And we'll see if he adds another threat to the board, because that's the real... Yeah, if he can keep replacing whatever Tony kills with something else, he's in fantastic shape. But, you know, if Tony gets to get rid of the Heir of the Wilds this turn, and then, well, okay, there we go.
He's going to play another one.
Yeah, if Tony gets to, make it so that Joseph only gets to poke for 2 a turn, then that's going to get him the reprieve that I think he needs.
I was a little curious if Joseph was going to hold back because he saw Anger of the Gods earlier. So there's a thought process of maybe I'll hold back in case my opponent does peel a red sword, Shivan Reef, or a fetch land, something like that. Stoke the Flames to draw here for Pierson, but he just is going to keep building his board and try to get the game over with because right now it's a 2-turn clock.
Yeah.
By adding the Heir of the Wilds to the table.
And it's interesting to me that Tony went to the head there with that Jeskai Charm.
I mean, could be trying to race.
I guess that's the way you win, right? It's not a good plan, but it's the plan we have.
Yeah.
And then this looks like... Okay.
Now he's going to strike a creature, but the issue here is that he's shifting gears, right?
Yeah.
One burn spell went upstairs, now one burn spell's going downstairs.
Right.
So it's not, it's not in sync with what the original plan was, but
Yeah.
things changed once he played the Heir of the Wild. So now he's kind of all over the place with what he wants to do with the burn spells.
Yeah, and of course the Jeskai Charm can't go downstairs, in that sense.
Yeah.
You can't deal 4 damage to something and kill it.
Yep.
But you can buy time, which is what Tony needs to do here.
And now the burn plan is probably just out the window because now the Disciple comes in, it gains 5 life. And now, burning him out isn't even reasonable. So now you're getting to the point where, okay, now I hope I draw Anger of the Gods plus a red source.
Yeah.
That's his way to probably get back into this game. And we'll have to see if it happens on this draw step.
No.
Jeskai Charm.
That won't do it. So, again, he can only cast 1 spell. In this case, Jeskai Charm, probably the only one that really does anything. That's going to put... that at best use would be putting Nylea's Disciple back on top and only taking 4 and still being dead next turn.
Yeah, and letting your opponent probably gain 5 more life.
Sure. We're a long way from that mattering.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you ever hope to win this game, you're eventually going to have to get through that extra 5 life.
This is the first time I've seen this happen with Jeskai. And to be fair, we're only in about week 4 of the format, but
Sure.
I have never really seen this draw as far as their mana is concerned materialize. Normally there's a temple in here or a Mystic Monastery or something where, they're able to work their way towards land 4 and land 5 or a Magma Jet or something.
He had a Magma Jet, didn't he?
No, Strike. Lightning Strike this game. No Jet.
I think I've been looking at that Faded Conflagration and thinking it's a Magma Jet this whole time.
And there's Nemesis Morals. That thing is way too big.
That's a big old monster.
Way too big.
7 of Tony's remaining 8 life points at stake in this combat.
Something probably has to go on top with the Charm.
Yeah, and I think it's got to be something that is attacking because you still need the 2 draw steps. But again, even if we hit red source into Anger of the Gods, now we've got this Nemesis Mortals looming.
Yep.
Which is a 1-hit kill even without going monstrous at this stage.
And there's another one. So that is that's probably one more draw step here for Tony Pierson.
Yeah.
The Temple of Epiphany is really late to the party. Really late.
I'm wondering if there's some way that Joseph could be punished for adding that second Nemesis to the board.
The answer is a resounding no. With him on 4 land, no. If he had if he had, or him on 3 land up to 4 land, if he went from 4 land up to 5 land, and and hostilities was somehow in his hand, that is the way. But given that the situation, nope.
Yeah, that's so weird to get used to. In my mind, when that second Nemesis came down, I was like, dude, you're gonna get some pre-verdicted right out.
Yeah.
Come on, buddy.
I don't know the last time that we've been. I don't know if Magic's ever been in a world where we haven't had a 4-mana Wrath. We probably have.
I'm trying to remember it. When Hallowed Fountain, or Hallowed Burial was seeing a lot of play. There was actual Wrath of God in that format too, right?
I think for a small amount of time, yes.